Like Seattle, they don't have any old players anywhere. Like they're all, you could say Cooper Kupp, but Cooper's just, whatever he is, 30, 31 years old. But, even going to trade for Rashid Shaheed, going to trade for Ernest Jones, a 4th-round pick. Like they spent and used their picks wisely on players that helped them out immediately.
That was just a dominant run, all playoffs long, quite frankly, by the Seattle Seahawks defense. And in that game, I mean, Drake Maye just had no shot. None.
No, but that's what game planning does. That's when you have really smart coaches and it's an old, Fred Warner, if he was on with us right now, is an old linebacker term. Like, if you know the formation, you know the play. You study the formations, you know the plays. And, whether it's the run play or any play, but like they broke down their protections. That's why the blitzes got home constantly. When they did blitz, not that they had to do it a lot, but their blitzes got home. The route combinations, they just sat on top of it. They matched them up. They were all over that offense. And, it falls on Drake. It falls on the left tackle. All these things that people want to make, to be, goats, scapegoats right now. But honestly, the 49ers went through the same thing. Like they know the tendencies. Like this is a very smart staff. You can tell Mike McDonald isn't a guy doing a rah-rah stuff. He's not a guy out there trying to motivate you. What he's trying to do is let you know that if you do these things, you're going to be successful. Like they don't need a lot of that stuff. They know what's coming, and they're prepared for it. And then they play with good technique. They're not interfering. They're not getting their hands on guys. And John Schneider has drafted exceptionally well, as good as anybody in this business. So you combine all those forces, and, the Patriots have no points at the end of 3 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, Baldy was, it was a pretty thorough win. And they were thoroughly the best team in the league. And I think that they deserved it. They earned it. And I'm sitting here and I'm saying, what should the Niners learn from team building or from play calling or from play style that the Seahawks taught the NFL this year? Like, what's the big takeaway if I'm a 49er fan to kind of close that gap?
Well, you've got to draft very well. You've got to spend your money wisely. And then you've got to have an innovative coach. Mike McDonald is pretty new to this thing. He's 38 years old. I think he's 38. But, he hasn't been around that long. So the things that he's doing, people are going to catch on to some of the things he's doing, but it's a little bit like how Sean McVay came into this business and took it over by storm. It's a little bit like Mike Shanahan and then Kyle to a degree, but there's a great deal of innovation. Some of that innovation that Mike brought to Baltimore was fueled in college in how they were defending the no huddle, the up-tempo offenses, and some of the things that you saw in college. And so he sort of took some different concepts. He brought them to Baltimore. They have the number 1 defense in football. But if you looked at Drake, if you looked at Drake in this game, he's holding the ball for an extra tick. That's how Julian Love is intercepting that ball. It's not Matt Stafford, where the 2 throws that he made that led to the first touchdown were with zero fear. He threw it one into a hornet's nest, but it was the right throw, and the zone was collapsing on Matt Collins. He made the throw, and then they caught Seattle in a no-huddle situation where they didn't get lined up on Matt Collins very fast. And because they weren't lined up, they had a little bit of a step on the corner, Josh Jobe on the play. And so some of it is innovation and new ideas and new concepts, and then elite talent.
You have always been a Sam Darnold fan, and it feels like you've been in his corner for quite some time. What's the lesson to be learned on Sam Darnold if I'm an NFL executive right now and I'm preparing for the draft that's coming up in free agency?
Well, number 1, Joe, is you don't give up on the talent. The talent is exactly the same as it was coming out of USC. Arm strength, mobility, processing ability, commitment to the game. Like all that stuff is the exact same thing that made him the 3rd pick in the draft. Now, you can say that about Baker, and Baker's had success in this league, hadn't won a Super Bowl, but you can say it about, obviously Stafford. You go through the guys in this league. Like the talent hasn't changed. He hasn't had a bunch of injuries. It's just taken away from his skill. Like, the talent is the same. The organization has changed. And it started with him going to San Francisco. And just seeing Kyle coach and what they did in practice and how they built the team and how Brock flourished in this particular scheme with the talent that he had. And then you go to Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, and there's Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and here's, an elite left tackle and and then, Brian Flores on defense. You win 14 games. And you can say, he was terrible at the end. Well, the offense line was terrible at the end, and, they couldn't protect him against the Rams, et cetera. But the talent never changed. The organization around him changed. And that's, I think, the big lesson.
How big of a loss is losing Clint Kubiak to Vegas going to be for Seattle, Baldy?
Well, it's big because let's face it, Mike McDonald's first choice at offense coordinator was Ryan Grubb, and it didn't work at all. Now, they had Geno Smith, maybe that was the quarterback, whatever. But, Clint, first of all, a lot of the concepts aren't that much different than what Sam learned for his year in San Francisco, and then some of the things that Kevin O'Connell does in Minnesota. So there was concepts that he was very familiar with and he was good at. His movement, mobility, all that stuff, rolling to his left on bootlegs. But they've got to find a guy that can really play to Sam's strengths. And so I don't know who that is at this point. I'm not out there trying to, guess who's going to be that guy. But they need somebody that understands how to marry the run game and the pass game the way Clint Kubiak did. Even Clint Kubiak did when he was in New Orleans the year before, the first 2 weeks of the season, they were scoring 40 points a game, their number one offense in football. And then the offensive line completely fell apart. So, and then they went backwards. But, they didn't really have a quarterback. But they've got to find somebody that can do those things right now.
So I want your opinion on this. It was refreshing for me to see Sam Darnold win the Super Bowl with the Seahawks. And we didn't have to feel like this, oh, my God, is he top 5? Is he elite? Is he this? Is he that? Yeah. Like, it was actually really refreshing. It's like, hey, they're the best team. He played great. He didn't turn the ball over. And it didn't feel like this, I don't know, this wormhole of anger about how elite he is and how good he is. And I found it to be quite refreshing. How about you?
Yeah. I agreed with you, Joe. We're not getting any of that conversation right now. People kept with the same, he's a journeyman quarterback and he had to go through to Sam, he was just a quarterback. Like, he had some injuries in New York and the team wasn't very good and went to Carolina and they were in transition. And I said to everybody, that year in San Francisco is all Sam needed. Like, just to remind himself of what this thing is about, which it's never really about the quarterback. Quarterback's got to execute. Don't get me wrong. There's never enough good quarterbacks. But everything around you has to be really good, Joe. We can argue, to your point, because it's a great question and observation. You can argue Brock Purdy. They're arguing about him all week in San Francisco. You heard it, right? Well, the team isn't very good around Brock right now. It's not a good defense. They're not elite. They don't do anything exceptionally well. You can say Raheem Morris, Robert Saleh. They're not very good. Seattle is really good. They haven't missed on one single draft pick, not one. They've got corners that are sitting on the sideline that are better than the 49ers corners. Like, they're deep and they're talented. So, and then they have, a play caller that has all of these different things at his disposal, especially when the offense isn't turning the ball over. So it's a collection. And the collection was the best collection of talent in the league this year.
Baldy, I'm so glad you brought that up about the team around Brock, because I'm looking at it and I'm like, God, there's just no good players under 26 on this team. And that doesn't mean that you can't fill those holes, but this is a huge offseason for them, a huge offseason. And I don't think they're one player away. I think that they are a full offseason away from being there. I'm not saying that you can't, in an individual year, find a way to win the West or whatever, and the Seahawks fall down a little. But I just think that they've got a lot of holes across the board. And so to trade a slew of picks for one guy, no matter who that guy is, I think that's a fool's errand. I think they need to spend really wisely in free agency. I think they need to hit a lot of their picks. I would even be open to trading one of the current players who can net you back some picks. Are you more in that camp like I am? Or are you in the, no, trade whatever you can to go make a splashy acquisition?
No, I'm in the, like, for example, like Seattle has 4 picks this year. You watch what John Schneider turns those 4 picks into. Because he does, they're in good shape with a lot of young players. But even a couple years ago, Joe, when the 49ers, kept finding ways. I mean, credit Jed and his staff. They kept finding ways to pay Fred, to pay Nick, right? To pay Brock, to pay Ayuk, to pay George, to pay McCaffrey. I mean, they paid everybody somehow. But every one of those guys are veteran players. And in Trent's case, an aging veteran player. Like Seattle, outside of Leonard Williams, they don't have any, and maybe Tank Lawrence, they don't have any old players anywhere. Like they're all, you could say Cooper Kupp, but Cooper's just, whatever he is, 30, 31 years old. Even going to trade for Rashid Shaheed, going to trade for Ernest Jones, a 4th-round pick. Like they spent and used their picks wisely on players that helped them out immediately. And so you look at them and you go, that's, Devin Witherspoon and Iman Wari. And like, you just go through the list of them. They haven't made many mistakes. And it's about team building. And so the 49ers have got to, and I don't know if Mustafa and some of these guys, Upton Stout, like they all look like they can play, to some level, but they don't look like they're difference makers right now. Now, we've got to see what some of these young defensive linemen go into. You always got to give those guys a year, but they're so far away from where Seattle is right now. And the Rams.
Yeah. I mean, is the gap that significant between the Rams, Seahawks, and then everyone else in the NFC?
I feel like it is, only because the Rams have so many good young players. Jared Verse, Puka. Like, you just go through the list of Steve Avila at left guard. Like, they've got so many good young players. They went out and got Landman to play middle linebacker. They filled some holes. They know they need corners, and I'm sure that's what they're going to address, just the way, the 49ers have with Witherspoon and Woolen. I mean, they've spent first-round picks on their corners, and they're all out there making great plays. So, but they have hit on all their middle picks. You look at, the 4th and 5th round picks of Puka and, the different guys that they've struck gold on, and they've just drafted better right now. And so I feel like there's a talent gap. Now, you could say, okay, if you take Stafford out of there, you got to replace your quarterback, maybe they come back to the pack. And so, but they're fortunate. They got a 37-year-old guy that can still play at a high level.